Hi, good morning. I am just going to go over the strategic goals for fiscal year 24. And what this all boils down to when I talk about the Department of Public Safety is we are committed to core values. It's all boiled down to professionalism, integrity, respect, and service. And providing the best public safety services, treating everyone with dignity and respect, and also for our employees, creating and sustaining a positive working environment. This is our current table of organization. Not as fancy as JP's, but we'll still go with it. Okay. It's basic, says what we got, broken down to 4 squads, lieutenant, sergeant, 4 public safety officers on each squad, 7 part-time personnel, 1 law enforcement captain, 1 fire EMS captain, volunteers, and the police public service auxiliary. Here's what we work with, and this is where we're going. Okay, you can look at these years of the trucks. You'll see our physical inventory could use a little work. And when it comes time to budget requisitions, I've worked with David on a couple of things, and I'll be referring back and forth to David on a couple of technology issues. So this is what we got. The last one on the bottom, you see the 2007 rigid hull inflatable boat, AKA RIB. Okay, that's the one on the side of the station right now that is out of service. It's at this point not worth repairing. So Mike prepared something. Mike Harris prepared a survey form, and that's one of the things in the council meeting that's going to be listed for a disposal.
Can we go back on that? So we know the big fire truck is being replaced.
Yep.
And the 2 ambulances down below are replaced. Is there anything else on there that you're borderline uncomfortable with, that you're just not sure if it's going to work right, but maybe putting it off because of expenses?
Well, they're all expensive. The ladder truck, that's the one that's, we'll talk about that in a minute. But if we can get rid of another one, and that all comes into some of the other things I'm going to be talking about as far as FEMA grants. The 1993 Henderson, that's right now, that's the reserve fire engine we have in the back. That's the one where the pump sometimes works, sometimes doesn't work. So when it does come time where we can get a new engine, the Henderson's going to go. The 2006 and 2003, they're not bad. Okay, every now and then they need a repair. The issue we run into in a lot of cases is because of the island environment and not a lot of mileage put on them. You know, we'll run them. Average call is anywhere from 3 to 5 miles. They're not being run at high speed, so they do just take a lot of service.
Alan, with the FEMA grant that we're working on and we put out the bid, that included the 2 ambulances and a pumper truck.
That's correct.
Yeah, so that pumper truck would replace that 93.
Yep.
Okay.
That was my second slide. You got ahead of me. All right, that's okay. So anyhow, a lot of times when we do these goals, it's done with the agency. These aren't things I came up with. I spoke to the captains, I spoke to all the people in the agency, and the whole point to these goals is we wanted to make them realistic and attainable. So when we started looking at this, I'm going to go over the last couple of years, but for us, community safety and engagement, and once I get down to the slides, you'll see what each one is. Identify, develop, the breakdown, invest and develop personnel, and of course, this is a continual one too, is upholding department-wide accountability. But I first want to go over the recap. When I first came here in 2021, we did the 2022 fiscal year, and I started talking about things that we wanted to accomplish as far as public safety. So first one for the fiscal year 2022 is improve trust and relationships, et cetera, et cetera. How did we get there? Well, we started out with social media. We didn't have a social media page. We worked with Karen, getting a Facebook page up and running and getting our word out. The other issue we ran into is we were still in the midst of COVID. So it was kind of difficult at certain points to really have a relationship with the community because everybody was pretty much gun shy about any interactions. So we did reach that level. We got there faster than we wanted to. Now, as far as optimizing our resiliency, well, what do? We concentrated on training. We purchased continuing education because prior to that, the continuing education was, okay, let's go onto this website. Let's go onto this website. So we got to define continuing education that we were using for fire and EMS. We also made appropriate purchases where necessary, and we started running scenarios. What if things? How are we going to operate if this piece of equipment doesn't work? What are our contingency plans built in? So our goal there was to optimize the capacity, and that was also done. Okay. In addition to that, I was going out, attending different chiefs meetings, Brunswick County Chief, Mid-County Fire Departments, just trying to get reestablished relationships so that if the big one happened, which it did, okay, we had immediate response, not having to go through several different layers where a simple situation was now we call up and say, hey, here's what we need. So that was important as far as building relationships go. We have a very passionate workforce. Everybody here is triple trained, as you all well know. And one day there'll be police officers, next day there'll be firefighters, next day there'll be paramedics. And there's situations where they're going to go on a call, all three happen. So they may go on a domestic and somebody's hurt, or they may go where somebody's hurt and it turns into a domestic. So they have to be able to respond and be well trained. So investing in the DPS workforce was really important. And we also encourage them to attain more education. And department accountability, continuing theme. We instituted new accountability measures. We got new forms. We had stuff that we weren't doing before as far as any type of supervisory oversight. So all these things came into play. So those were the goals from FY22. Now we look at the 23. We didn't have goals. We had projects. This is the big one, the ladder truck. I can't tell you how many times people are asking me, where's the ladder truck? When's it going to be finished? Where's the ladder truck? When's it going to be finished? So what do? I call up Rob Ford or Brett. Rob, where's the ladder truck? When's it going to be finished? Okay, that's what it comes down to. Now, the reason I'm going to check that off, we've done everything we can do at this point. It's just a matter of all the components coming in. Once it does come together, we were told 60 to 90 days and stretching it maybe even 60 to 120 days, but that's when all the parts are in the right place.
Are they living to the deadlines that put in the contract?
If they don't reach it, they pay.
Right, but are they on track? The interim milestones as of today, are they on track to hit that deadline?
They didn't give us benchmarks as far as at what point we're going to go. When we went down for the pre-build back in April, we were told, here's what's going to come, but we didn't get deadlines because we're still falling into that supply chain.
Okay, so the reason I asked that question, we don't want the money.
No, I'd rather have the
so it's more about project managing all the interim deadlines to get there.
And that's why we keep calling up Rob and saying, where's the ladder truck? What's the progress?
Okay.
And he keeps us pretty much updated on it, but at certain points he could say, it is what it is.
Yeah, Alan, when you said the parts, components to be in it 90 to 120 days, over. When's the ladder? When's the overall, okay, so you got all the pieces now. What is our projected delivery?
Well, they told us November, okay? And once it leaves Ocala, Florida, then it has to go up to Rocky Point to the distributor, put the final touches on it. But if it does leave Ocala in November, they still haven't met the deadline. The distributor is going to add a couple different things to it, a few extra components, some extra lights, changing a few things, putting the lettering on it. But we were told that again, November. However, like Jerry said, we really don't want the money if they don't make the deadline. But Leland has been waiting for 2 years on a fire truck. They didn't go with E1, they went with Pierce, but it's.
So if things work out, there's a nice Christmas present.
Oh, absolutely.
It's wonderful. And so that we don't get surprised when we don't get the ladder in due date. Do you think it's worth finding out what some interim deadlines are between now and then? And seeing if they're on top of them, if they're hitting them?
I can check with Rob and see how that works, if they've done that before and if we can get that written in.
Okay, thanks.
The capital replacement program, well, that was a long-term plan submitted probably last year, just for the next 10 years, what parts, what equipment we're going to need, what things. I'm sorry, these glasses are new. I'm having a hard time getting used to them. So I'm kind of, anyway, I'll keep going. So the capital replacement program was submitted, whether it's engines, whether it's ambulances, whether it's QRVs, the police cars. We'd like to get a new one every year. We're still waiting on the one from the 2022 budget that we carried over into this year. And again, what's happening, what we found out is we're buying stuff on the state bid, state contract, and the dealers are getting $10,000 over the state bid price. So they're not going to sell to us. They're going to sell to somebody else who wants to come in and buy the car and get $10,000 more and to keep telling us it's going to wait. So again, supply and demand, and that's how capitalism works. This is an interesting one. I made the presentation last year going from the 40 to the 9. We've test fired several different brands. We're settling on one and literally trying to get the best bang for the buck on this. It's gonna actually work in the same holsters that we have now, so we don't have to spend extra money on holsters. We've got the money in the budget. It's just a matter of, no pun intended, pulling the trigger and buying it. Continual. We just had a meeting the other day and a Zoom, Teams meeting. We've got another meeting coming up about the cameras in the vehicles. We do have the body cameras. We're gonna get training on that. David really worked hard to get this purchase done. And a lot of things that I'm gonna be talking about is gonna be referring back to technology. And we've been working really well with David on that. And the management information system, Jerry was a very vocal critic of this last year, okay, that we want to purchase a system that is going to give us a policy, okay? And his question was, can we develop one or can we buy one that will put the village policies and the Department of Public Safety policies and public services policy all into one continuous project, one continuous platform. We've looked, we've researched, again, with David's help. We've also found out Wrightsville Beach is actually using that. They've got one for the whole village. So there's a company, it's called Power DMS. I'm very familiar with them. I used it in Florida and it's a really good platform. It's not that expensive. We have another meeting coming up with them and I think that would be the proper way to go. This was done with the MAP study, what type of salary incentives we were looking at. So that's an outcome we're still waiting on. So let's go into the first one. One of the things I'd like to do, and again, this is something that we have to do with Karen, is expand the use of the department website and social media. Our page on the village website, it's okay. We'd like to jazz it up a little bit, give it a little bit more information, put some FAQs on there, put a few more tabs on there, because people are asking us questions all the time. How do they contact us? It'll give them direct contact with either me or somebody in the command staff via email. A lot of times people don't know how to do that. So this is one of the areas we're looking to do. As far as engaging the community, that's going to go here with reducing the risk to our community through mitigation, education, and response. We talked at one time about a Citizens Police Academy or a Citizens Academy. Because of the transient nature, if we start something and we tell them, okay, it's a 14-week class or it's a 14-session class, they're not going to be able to finish it. So we kind of scaled back a little bit and we're looking at community education. We've talked with the college, Brunswick Community College, about putting on an emergency medical response class, which is a couple scales down from EMT. EMT is 230 hours, emergency medical response is 100 hours. And we've talked about the volunteers. We've talked about having some of the businesses. Somebody from the Shoals Club approached me about it, said it'd be nice if they could have that. And obviously having people trained in CPR is a big help, as we saw the other day. This is an interesting one, selective enforcement. We get a lot of calls. What can you guys do about the speeding? What can you guys do about these ICE vehicles? What can you do about the vehicles that don't appear registered? We react to a lot of these things, okay? And what we're gonna try to do with this, again, another attainable goal, is first of all, we are going to equip our vehicles. Our vehicles don't have radar units in them. Even though there's a posted speed limit here, 18 miles an hour, even though the majority of people do not have speedometers, the ICE vehicles do. So it's not like we're looking to catch people doing things wrong. What we're trying to do is educate and basically advocate for community safety and letting them know you're exceeding the speed limit, got you on radar. So we're looking to purchase radar. And we also are looking to have certain safety campaigns once a month, whether it's what we did a couple months ago, Operation Ice Chip, these little cutesy dames, okay, trying to stop some of the ICE vehicles to make sure all their permits are in place. In addition to that, again, I'll point to David. David is working on a program that is going to be able to assist us and assist the community by making everything inclusive. I don't want to get too far ahead of the game. He can talk about that because I might be stepping on his toes. I don't want to take away from his presentation. And increase our visibility in community contexts. This is an interesting one because we're trying to talk about how do we get ourselves out there. Somebody on the ferry asked me one day, I'm in full uniform, are there police on the island? You know, it's like, yeah. And I have to explain the whole concept, what we do. And then I had a little boy ask me one day, it's actually a couple days ago. His mother said, wave to the police officer. And he looks at me and he says to me, why are you here?
Oh.
And after wondering for a second, why am I here? I actually said to him, I said, we're here to protect you. I said, that's our purpose. We're here to protect you. We're here to make sure your rights are protected. This kind of went over his head, but this was more for his mother too. Okay, but just to show, this is the job we're supposed to do. This is the job everybody's trained for. This is the job that everybody I spoke about had a passion for. So we want to be able to get out there. And one of the other things we talked about, some of the guys upstairs were, again, coming up with cutesy names, coffee with the chief, pastry with public safety, just basically getting out there and having people say, okay, what do you guys do? All right, we see you in fire trucks, we see you in the ambulance. What exactly do you do? So interacting with the public a little bit more and trying to get them to understand that there are police on the island. And one more quick story about that. We had an incident last year, and Chris actually saw the body camera video where one of our officers was involved in an altercation, wound up making an arrest, and somebody actually said to him, "You can't arrest us, you're public safety." Well, au contraire. Okay, yes, we can, and that person took a ride to Bolivia. Okay, but it's not, I don't want to say ignorance, but they just don't know. So now, what do we want to do? Equipment, resources. We're looking, and again, this will come to budget time when we get the budget list of what we can buy, what we can't buy. But I keep looking at David because we've had all these discussions about buying equipment. He's going to talk about the radios and what the situation is with that. But we're also looking at some other equipment. Right now, we have 2 drones. They're in decent shape. We're trying to explore some grant funding because there are these drones out there where they actually can not be line of sight. We can deploy them from here. If something's out over the water, we can fly to a certain spot, release a raft. They have CO2 dispensers where we can actually release a life preserver or something like that. So that way we're kind of ahead of the game. So we're looking into all these things. That was a lot of stuff was done with David's help. One of the other things we're looking to do is still, we'll need David for this too, is a video magistrate. We talked about this last year. Just trying to speed up our process if we're making an arrest or if we're looking to get a search warrant, being able to do it. And not just simply by doing it with FaceTime, but doing it with all the proper forms through the AOC, as far as making sure everything is properly filled out and we're in line, because if something happens, they're going to backtrack and say, okay, what steps did you follow to get there? This will be back to Power DMS as far as reviewing, revising, formulating, implementing agency standard operating guidelines or SOPs, because right now we have operating guidelines. The policies could use a lot of work, and that's going to take some time. This is why we also wanted to investigate Power DMS. Flame premises, you're in the building. Okay. We want to look at building a little bit of character. Okay, we got plenty of characters working inside. We like a little bit of character outside the building. It looks like a big warehouse. And this is something that has been discussed where we can put the public safety logo above the doors. We're also looking at getting some graphics for each one of the doors saying engine, truck, EMS, just to give it, again, a little bit of character and make it look like a public safety building. We also are looking into building improvements. We've gotten a few bids on storage buildings, because if you walk through the bays, you almost have to kind of slalom how to get in and out because of the jet skis, because of the UTVs, because of the signboards. So we were exploring something. This was done with JP's help about putting a storage building behind, similar to what Public Services has. They cheap, okay, but it's something we need because if we're building for the long term, we're going to have to put something back there. With the 2 ambulances that we discussed, the plan is when we get them, 96, the box ambulance we have now, not the van. The box ambulance will actually be the rehab ambulance, the rehab for scenes, because right now we have a golf cart susceptible to weather. So we'd like to have everything enclosed. That's the future plan. So when we talk about a storage building, talking about making a pretty decent sized building that we don't have to worry about our equipment getting damaged.
This might be more a question for Chris than you, Alan. But I mean, you got all these things. It's so equipment heavy that you have to do. So to put some organization to it, the way most companies do it, they put things in 3 categories. What's legally required, just got to do it, period. And I'm going to ask them, or any of those that we don't have. What you really should have, because it's best practices. So you're not following best practices. And the 3rd category is always the wish list. Nice to have a wish list. We start at the top. Do we have anything missing that should be in the legally required category?
I would defer to Alan on that.
We have a very long list. Yeah, the same thing. What we'd like to have, what we need, what's imperative. And one of the other things, what we'd like to have, perimeter cameras. This is a very, not insecure building, but a lot of stuff goes on around this building that we'd kind of like to be able to record.
As far as by law.
The first category, legally
Yeah.
required. Where do we stand on
Required
that?
is, sir.
Legally required, well, we're pretty much meeting all the guidelines as far as any type of storage or anything else like that. We're just looking at future issues where stuff may get damaged from weather, other stuff, animals, we have deer going through here all the time, coyotes, the whole thing. So they see equipment outside, we'd like to have it covered.
So Jerry, are you talking about the building or are you talking about
Overall.
I'm
overall?
talking about just, I'm using it as an excuse here, but any capital implementation plan, pharmaceutical industry, jet industry.
No, I'm just
Put
asking,
them in those categories.
is your question here about legal things for the building or the department
Oh,
overall?
I'm sorry. No, for anything that's under the village's control. Yes, this is what's spurring my
It
question.
would be everything. It would be everything.
Yeah.
Well, that's what I'm
Department
saying.
equipment, et cetera.
So I think the question is, are we missing any vehicles? Are we missing any safety equipment?
Nope,
It's
And
required.
that's,
nope, we're up to snuff. It needs an update, but it meets all the requirements as far as NFPA or any type of state requirements for law enforcement.
And we have all the infrastructure in place to store, manage our medications, as an example, right? Firearms, which was more about policy and how things are being managed, but we're working on that.
And the rest is a little softer, but the report after the fire last year from the island, the best practices, not legally required, but best practices.
Yes.
Got a lot of leeway in there and then the wish list doesn't happen. But okay,
A lot of the things that came out of that after action report, we have implemented as far as purchasing equipment. Again, it takes time, unfortunately. So we had the volunteer equipment, the volunteer turnout gear actually was shipped. And it's just a matter of we'll get to the warehouse and then it has to get here. But that was one of the big things that we tried to accomplish, and that is on the way. The other thing we're looking at is maintenance contracts for our building itself. Something we've worked with Mike and JP on as far as you heard all the trials and tribulations of the AC over the summer. They've developed a couple different ideas about what we can do to mitigate any heat-related situations coming up next summer, which we're trying to get to as fast as possible. So that the building upstairs, the floor, again, it's 5 years old. It gets walked on a lot. It was not the top of the line floor. So we're looking at some improvements being made there. And that's part of the whole plant and premises. Landscaping, we finally got a landscaping thing in. We're starting to get trees on the outside. We're trying to beautify the building. We want to make it looking good outside as much as we do inside. And again, character.
Chief, hang on a second.
Oh, in the back, wait a minute.
This may come back to JP, but in your report yesterday, I thought I understood you say that you've made the repairs to the geothermal HVAC system here, so.
Correct.
So it's running now the way we want it running going forward. You've made all the improvements, finally got,
All the improvements have been made, but all the repairs have been,
okay, so there's,
so it is running as designed right now.
okay. But there's additional improvements you're
Yes,
looking
we
to
want
make.
to do some redundancy and backup systems.
Okay,
We're looking at doing that with some
Okay.
ductless. And then we just had the quotes come in on that. I have to check with Mike to see where we are with that.
okay, good, thank you.
So that would be the however. It's working, however.
Got it. Thank you.
Continual, okay, as far as continuing to invest in development to personnel. And we also do not have, and we're working on this, a comprehensive employee succession plan. Someone comes to the agency, we want to find out from them what's expected of them. What can you do for us? Here's what we can do for you. If you want to advance in rank, if you want to go off into a different specialization, you're going to have interviews in the beginning to see what direction you'd like to go in. One of the results of the MAP study, if you come into the agency and you want to get promoted, you have to be a paramedic. So what steps can we take to have somebody complete paramedic training? This is the succession plan. In addition to that, succession plan for command staff. If they want to move up from sergeant to captain, sergeant to lieutenant, lieutenant to captain, captain to director eventually. What's our succession plan for them? So we're building that plan and we have something in place. In fact, Josh, okay,
Yeah,
the captain,
Josh, yeah.
the captain, he's going to a chief's training program next week for potential put on by the state for people who are in command staff and who have been identified as potential leaders for the next generation.
Good for him.
And the village gives us great benefits. People aren't aware of them, so we're making them more aware of the fact that, hey, you can get a college degree and the village will assist you in paying for it. It's good for you, it's good for the village, and it makes us look better as an agency and it helps in our ratings. And invest in our programs to enhance employee resiliency. There we go. The better physically fit we are, we get physicals every year. The better physically fit we are, better it is for our people, the better it is for the village. They spend less money on health benefits. People last longer. So we're encouraging people. In the policy right now, they're supposed to do 30 minutes of physical training. The majority of them do that. We also want to send another one of our officers to a physical trainer class so he can become a physical trainer instructor and actually develop plans so that our people can follow those every day. And once they do that, it's also falling into that professionalism aspect where it'll be available to people in the village. We're an open book, except for investigations, obviously. Okay. But we want to be transparent. People come and they say, what are you guys doing as far as this goes? We'll tell them. Okay. I said the same thing when I first got here. Anytime you want to come into the station, look around. What is this for? What are you guys doing with all these things? So transparency is real important. And something that Jerry was talking about, we look to other agencies for best practices. When we look at our policies, we look to see which ones worked. I've taken a lot from the agency I used to work. This one worked. This could be applicable to here. There's no way this is going to work here because of the uniqueness of this agency. Law, fire, EMS. What works in a law enforcement agency may not be applicable for EMS or fire. So we have a code of ethics for law enforcement. We have a code of ethics for fire. We have a code of ethics for EMS. They all combine. Data utilization, trying to get our reports streamlined. We've developed something with our current software system, Southern Software, where we can easily access reports. We can easily access vehicle maintenance issues. We also have our internal affairs on there. So we're trying to combine it, streamline it, whatever you want to say, just to make it readily retrievable so that we don't have to go into this file cabinet for this one, this file cabinet for that one. And the accountability, that's going to be body cameras. That's also going to be using our part-time employees a little bit better. We've got 3 very active part-time employees. So we want to be able to utilize them because what's that going to do? Well, it'll supplement our personnel power, but it's also going to reduce our budget. And not reduce the budget, but put less strain on the budget. So we're not paying for overtime. You know, we've talked about using part-time personnel instead of hitting everybody up for time and a half. So that's one of the other directions we're trying to go in. And the accountability and the clarity. Someone asks, Chris says to me, how come you're spending so much money in overtime? I can explain to him. We do a budget meeting every week. So this is some of the things we're striving for. And again, these are attainable because if they weren't, I wouldn't have put them up as strategic goals. So these are the objectives we get there.
Alan, before you move on, are you about to move on to number 5?
There is no number 5.
Okay, there you go.
Let me blank after this, but go ahead.
Okay, the internal controls, transparency, chain of communication. So you got public who are angry at you guys or happy with you guys. Do they know where they go? Who do they talk to? Do they go to Chris, who transfers information to you, or are they coming to the, you know, they're going to go wherever they go, but you know, when they go to that place, do they get where do they get directed?
Interesting comment because Chris and I have talked about this, God knows how many times. Why are they coming to you? They should be coming to me. And this is part of our education. When we go back to our website saying this is how you can contact somebody if you have a complaint or a compliment. We get compliments all the time. They send them to Chris or they'll send them to me. Someone will walk inside the station and they'll ask to speak to whoever the supervisor is. We're doing pretty well as far as complaints go. We're doing a lot better with compliments. So the chain as far as communication goes isn't where we'd like it to be because a lot of times you'll get an email from someone, you'll pass it down to Chris, Chris will pass it down to me. Or if I get something, I'll send it up to you guys just to let you know what type of progress we're making. It's still kind of cloudy and I don't know how we can fix it at this point. Because people are gonna go, if they know you, they're gonna go right to you. You know, they're gonna complain about public safety. They're gonna say, hey, they did a great job. They did a terrible job. And the same thing with Chris. And if they see me out there, they'll say the same thing. So it's still cloudy.
Yeah, I guess, the scenario that I was building in my head is somebody comes to the door and Elizabeth's sitting there. You know, and it's like, she is not, you know, it's like complaining to the baggage handler at the airport. That, she's not the person you should be complaining to, and just how her instructions are now, you have to direct them to. Or I got a button here. I know who's gonna respond when I hit this, and they're gonna come down and talk to this person.
Yes and yes.
Okay,
She knows she'll call either the supervisor on duty. She'll refer it to one of the captains. Captain Swanson has the office right downstairs. If he's there, she'll send him, bring him out, or it goes upstairs with somebody. She knows how to send it off to somebody. And it's not gonna be, okay, go back, we'll call you later. We'll respond immediately.
Peter, I've had that experience, just as Alan's, excuse me, describing it. I've come in to report usually another missing stop sign. And she always calls somebody down to talk with me about location, what I saw.
And glad you brought that up, actually, because the accountability, we just we developed a whole new property policy. And when we're talking about cell phones, instead of burying the cell phones in the evidence room and then waiting for the evidence custodian to come in, we have a temporary area. So if someone loses a cell phone, comes back into the station 2 hours later, hey, I lost my cell phone. Prior to this, we were telling them, well, the evidence guy isn't here, you're gonna have to come back. So now we have a procedure in place where we can get this back to them and still keep the evidence chain working. So tipping the scales a little bit, but these are the goals we want to reach. And that's the flips.
okay, I have another question. When was your meeting with Lou and those guys? You guys put together a pretty comprehensive list of.
But in July.
That was
And then we
July.
worked through October.
Right.
I think we met again in early November.
Sounds about right.
November seems right.
And out of all that, I can tell you that there's still a few remaining things that Alan's working on, and that is the departmental SOG, we're SOG, SA, SOGs. I think they're almost done with the public service auxiliary and the volunteers. Departmental SOGs, of course, are much more
Complicated.
comprehensive, so that's gonna take them a little more time.
So we are making progress on a volunteer SOG.
Yes,
Public safety, public
Public service,
auxiliary. I said.
they're pretty much done. I mean,
They had a meeting here 2 Sundays ago where they ratified their bylaws, worked on selecting different teams. Captain Gibson was here. I listened on the telephone and I made my comments. So we've gotten that one pretty much under wraps. Yeah, volunteer SOGs. Chris and I met with Diane and John Jelinek, going over a couple of different things that we could tweak a little bit. It is a work in progress because they are volunteers. So we don't want to hold their feet to the grindstone too much, but there are certain accountability levels that have to be reached.
I'll tell you out of that meeting what we did discuss, and not to get too in depth with it, but we talked about staffing levels specific to our firefighting capabilities and response. There was some reference that in the volunteer pool that because of this change in the demographics of people that are moving to Bald Head Island, not being as civically engaged and just wanting to come here to cut ties and
right.
let loose, that our volunteer pool on firefighters that are certified to work interior is very low.
Yeah.
To the extent, how can we beef that back up? And I don't have the answer today, of course, but know that that's going to be a balance, of course, in at what point do we ramp up our full-time firefighter staffing level? And so that's
And just to expand on that a little bit, we talked a little bit about that, in casual conversation yesterday evening, last night, but and so, the bottom line is if there aren't people on the island willing to serve as a volunteer fire person, we have no other choice but to hire people to do the job.
Right.
Right, so if people are willing to step up and serve in that role, wonderful. But if we don't have that, then we gotta pay to get that done.
There's got to be critical staff levels that obviously you monitor all the time, and we're, as we build out, those haven't changed. And if we're not filling it with, if we're not filling it with volunteers, then
Our part-time staff, 7 of them, 3 of them are just law enforcement. So 3 of them are law enforcement only. 4 of them are paramedics, or EMTs and firefighters. So when they do come to work, yes, that'll be an extra person on staff, or they'll complete staff shortages. So we're not over on that sense. And it's something else that when we talked about it, one of the questions was, well, how do some of these other villages, St. James always comes up, who also have a slightly older population, how do they have such a large volunteer fire department? You have professional firefighters who retired from other agencies and now live in St. James.
Yeah.
These are career firefighters. We don't have that here.
right.
When we get one, great. We don't have that yet.
Work them to death.
Are we advertising on social media outlets or whatever about how we'd like volunteers?
No, we're not.
I mean, I just wonder if the word is out.
They tend to, say, talk among themselves. They put the word, but we are pretty much set with what we have. And then one of the hardest things is for people wanting to dedicate at least 36 hours. And it doesn't all come at one time. And it's going to be at Brunswick Community College. It's going to be at Southport. You have to go through different levels of certification. It's a minimum of 36 hours to get certified as a volunteer firefighter. And although it doesn't sound like a lot, the travel, locations can add up, and the physical fitness aspect, it's pretty stringent.
That would rule me out. Just
Not
saying.
necessarily. You never know. I mean, excuse me. What happens is you'll see different fire states, you'll see different fire departments throughout the county, any place else, and you're looking at some of them and say, ooh, this guy's really out of shape. Years ago, that person wasn't out of shape. They maintain a minimum physical standard, but the initial qualification, you really got to run and jump and do a lot of stuff in full gear.
Does it make sense you mentioned the word transparency, catching up on a bunch of stuff. It's hard to look at these that came out, because some are what the volunteers said, some is a report from an independent chief from the mainland, some reports not as much, but does it make sense to pick out the key things from the different reports? Update where we are for 2 purposes, to see where we are, what we got to do, but also put it out there so that the community sees this is what we've done. This isn't done, we're 80% of the way there, then this is what we're gonna do. And then these are things we're not gonna do. So don't expect it.
Yeah, I think
And
that,
why.
I think
We did
you-
that.
that same,
November.
yeah.
Yeah.
Aaron, with that was, at
Karen,
maybe the November. Yes, yeah, we did a full
Yeah,
piece on that.
been done.
yeah.
Where we were,
Right back.
where we've been, and where we're going.
And honestly, every one of those comments was I said, regardless of who said what, we looked at it.
We did,
How was the
Absolutely.
input back from that?
very positive.
Yeah, when we met with them
Good.
in November, it was, they thanked us actually.
Yeah.
And were appreciative of the work that we had done to address all of the things that were codified out of that meeting back in July, that 4 hour, I mean, we were there for a long time, Scott and we were there, and
As far as that meeting goes and as far as the whole process goes, and I don't know if Will or Charles ever heard this statement, the law is an ass. And every now and then someone needs to come by and give it a swift kick. Hey, we needed a kick and we got it. So law, but we needed a kick and we got ourselves a nice kick and we worked on it.
I'm trying to find, can you talk about the report was done at a meeting with people, or was it also published to the whole island?
I have landing anniversary message went out to the village's voice subscribers. So
And it addressed
Good.
the issues that had been looked at.
Did we include a link to the report?
Was.
Okay. I mean, we didn't put out like that.
Oh, no,
had a-
no, like a one-page
Chat out, but
summary. I didn't want to point to this because one document is from one group, another document is from another group, so I'm just talking in general.
right, yeah. Because, I mean, it was out there already in the public because that's how folks, there was a public information request for it, but, it was public. And there's no problem with that. I mean, there's a reason why we asked a third party outside review to review how our response, and that's not unusual with any department after any
Should be.
event.
Nature of that.
Because we want to know, how can we improve?
No, I do, yeah, it was great. That's why I just forgot the part, trying to make sure folks on the island know everything that you guys are doing.
And they,
Not everything.
yeah, those that were interested should know.
Absolutely.
Excellent.
They were personally communicated with.
And if somebody else new comes along, wants to know what happened and how, then we can just steer him to chief and he can go back through that entire report and tell them, here's all that we've done.
That's
So
great.
we've got, the work's been done. All we got to do now is communicate to them and have questions.
Great.
And I want to back up and remind us all that there was a lot of stuff that was brought up in those meetings that the village had already done or was already working on, right? And don't lose sight of the fact that we were already doing a lot of good stuff.
And some of the stuff was not entirely 100% accurate.
Right, there was misinformation.
There's
water pressure and
misinformation
things like
in
that.
there. And,
I thought it was a good exercise. I know it took a lot of work,
yeah.
but I think it was worth the effort. And I think it demonstrated that the team was on it. A large part of it, we did well. There are a few things we can clean up and we are. And so I think,
Some of it's still a work in progress.
yeah,
And it's going to be like these strategic goals. It's continual.
Yep.
Thanks. Ellen, thanks so much.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.